glasses for this.
This interview is with Judith Emerson. Interviewing for the Oklahoma Historical Society is Rodger Harris. Today's date is December the 6th, 2005, and the location is at Judith's home in Tulsa. So where should we start talking about your family?
Okay, well, the last interview you did with me, of course, was on my art history mainly, and we just, touched on my Indian family history, Cherokee history. And this is, this interview is mostly about my Cherokee ancestry and all this new information that has come to me the last year. And I want this interview mainly to honor the memory of my late sister. She passed away Christmas Eve in 1994, and here we are at the holiday season, and so I think it's very appropriate that somehow this interview was lined up at this time of the year. And
her name?
Her name was Sue Ann Emerson, and she wrote and self-published a book on our family history that is called The Houstons of Tahlequah. And on the cover of this book, you can see that's my grandfather when he was little. And anyway, she researched and she worked so hard to put this book together on our family history. And then she passed away. She got the book published. She had a book signing at Cherokee Holiday that year. And, then she was gone just a few months later. So she is the one that did all the work. And now, as a result of all the work that she has done, all this new information has been coming to me. And how that came about is I have a website for my artwork, and I had put my sister's book on the website. And there was a genealogist, historian in Atlanta, Georgia, who was doing research on the old Cherokee elite before the removal, and he found that there was not a lot written about some of the what were considered Cherokee kings before John Ross. And so he has done a lot of research and written a lot of papers. Anyway, he saw my sister's book, and he wanted to get a copy of it, and so he contacted me. And that is, and since then, and that happened about a little over a year ago, all this new information he has been sending me. And his name is Mike Wren. I would like to acknowledge him. And he has done a lot of work for the Trail of Tears Association, and contributed a lot of papers, and done a lot of research. And
R-A-N-D, Wren?
W-R-E-N, Wren.
Wren, beg your pardon.
Yeah,
Glad I asked.
Yeah, my accent's.
Sorry.
Yeah, W-R-E-N. And if I could, I would like to read maybe some of the initial correspondence, how it started with him.
Okay.
Is that good?
Certainly.
Okay. I don't want to cover too much, so I'll just go through what is highlighted. I grew up in Northeast Alabama. Like many families, mine has a tradition of Cherokee ancestry, but that's another story for another day. I became interested when I was young in learning more about the Cherokee who had lived in the same area where I lived. On the internet, I ran across a couple of references to your sister's book. Eventually, I was able to find your website. The Houston I am looking for came west from the general area of Turkeytown, which covered an area on the Coosa River from the from near the Georgia state to the present Gadsden, Alabama. He was on the Henderson roll as Uste, and that's Eustee, and we have figured out that probably came from the Cherokee word which I heard my grandfather use, Uste, which is little, which might have been a term of endearment, but we're not sure. Okay. He emigrated in John Binge's detachment in a family unit with 3 males and 1 female under age 10, 2 males and 1 female over 15, and 1 female over 50. His mother's name was Nancy Path Keller, who died before 1842 in either Flint or Tahlequah districts. He had a brother named Crying Snake, who may have died soon after emigration. In the Cherokee validations in the U.S. serial set, there is a validation for him for $2,148.75. Anyway, that's how it all started. And I wanted to particularly acknowledge him because, my sister, and then if it hadn't been for my sister, this connection would have never happened if it hadn't been for her work. And so I feel like all this has just been, it's not my bent to get into genealogy or history, but it's just been falling in my lap. And I feel like, in a sense, it's like coming from the stars. And like my sister, I know this sounds poetic, but I feel like, in a sense, she is sending this information to me, and I feel some sort of obligation to do something with it because, she did all the work. I talked to Mike Wren on the phone last night and told him about this interview and that I would send him a copy of the videotape.
Yeah.
And we had not talked before. And when I told him that I wanted this, to be a tribute to my sister, he said, well, he thought it should be. And he, even expressed this feeling that this was coming from her. So, anyway.
Now, what is his relationship to the family?
To my family?
Yes.
None whatsoever. And it was his general interest in, and he grew up around that area where Turkeytown was. And so, as a boy, he grew up interested in Cherokee history. And he just became very interested in the chiefs and the leaders before the removal, and had found out that very little had been written or researched about them. And he was particularly interested in Path Keller, who was the last principal chief of the Cherokee in the Nation East before John Ross. And he had already done some research, and I guess sensed that we were part of that family. So when I sent him a copy of my sister's book, then he started sending me all this information. And it was just mind-boggling. And he acknowledged my sister's book. He said, in fact, he wrote something very nice about that. And he said, I have some information your sister didn't have. And he just sent me all these claims, and, like I said, this notebook is full. So when he sent me that, I emailed him back and I said, is that all? I couldn't believe it. So we have been corresponding this whole year.
Yes.
And
now, what's his background? Is he?
He is actually, and we talked on the phone last night. He is a businessman. We kept this always on a very professional level. We didn't know that much about each other, but he's a businessman, and he just he's a history nut. And he's not like a professional historian, but like I said, he's done some work with the Trail of Tears Association, and he's written some articles for genealogical journals, and he is planning on definitely writing something about the Path Keller legacy. So
now, is he related in some way?
No. No, he's not.
And he's not Cherokee.
somewhere in here he says that that there is something in his history, way back that may be Cherokee. No, but primarily I think this comes from, and I hope I have the information right. That he grew up right around Turkey Town, which was and I wanted to have a good map here. Here's a map. I don't know if you can you see this? Can you zoom in on it?
Yeah, we can. The name of the book is
It's
Cherokee.
from the Cherokees by
Right.
Grace Steele Woodward.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the library yesterday and I tried to download one of the old maps, from that was made like in 1835, and I wasn't able to do it.
You could turn your
But
book.
this says Cherokee towns and settlements in the federal period, 1785 to 1838. And now wait a minute, let me make sure it's got. I thought it had Turkey Town on it, but now I'm not sure. There's Tennessee. Oh, yeah, there it is. But it doesn't actually have Turkey Town. It has Gunner's Landing, and that's where, right here.
Hold it down just a bit. Okay. Let's see, that's page 111.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that would be like up in the more or less the northeast corner of Alabama.
Okay. Thank you.
And you see the Coosa River, I think it's on there.
Mhm.
And it says it has Gunner Landing. Well, that's close by Turkey Town. And Gunner's Landing is actually where one of the detachments, or maybe more than one, left from to come to Oklahoma. Okay. So, I have a general, I made a timeline.
Mhm.
I made a timeline from 1776 to the present day. And, it's pretty extensive, and what I'm doing with that timeline is I hope to have it as a skeletal framework for me if I do write a historical novel about my family, because it would be worthwhile to have this timeline to work from, and I have it, and I want to take it from 1776 to the present, simply because David McCullough wrote 1776, which is the birth of the American nation, and I thought it would be interesting to take it from the Indian perspective, particularly Cherokee. So maybe I'll do that someday. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But anyway, Keller, who was the principal chief of the Cherokees in the nation east before the removal, was born somewhere between 1737 and 1747. He died in 1827. I don't have his birth documented.
Mm-hmm.
He fought. Now we would be direct descendants of Pat Keller. And he fought at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend with Andrew Jackson. And he was actually made a colonel, and that was with against the Creeks, right?
The Red Stick.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, he died in 1827. His wife was Peggy Path Keller, and we would be descended from her because of the matrilineal.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a copy of a will that Peggy Path Keller left of their estate, and that estate, her estate was administered by John Ridge.
Mm-hmm.
And if you'd like, and I would love to read the will.
Yes.
It's short, but it was what was left, and this is what she left, and actually she even names calls people by name in the will. The estate was considerable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is dated January 13, 1829. In the name of God, amen. I, Peggy Pathkiller of Turkeytown, by the blessing of Providence, being sound in health, but now far advanced in the journey of life, have a prospect now soon to sleep with my ancestors, as is ordained by the Great Spirit that we are all approaching the ground. I hereby leave my last will and testament, and dispose of my property in the following manner to my descendants, to wit, to my oldest daughter Nancy, and we know now that Nancy would have been, I'll get into that later. We would have been the mother of Usti.
Mm-hmm.
It's just mind-boggling. It's too much stuff. The oldest daughter Nancy, to wit, my oldest daughter Nancy, one Negro woman named Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
To my daughter Nellie, one Negro girl named Kate. To my grandson Crying Snake, one Negro young man named Whippoorwill. I love that. And it has the word for whippoorwill in Cherokee, which I don't know how to pronounce.
Mm-hmm.
To my grandson Usti, and that would be my grandfather, one Negro named Stephen. To my sister's daughter Kiliku, one Negro girl named Esther. To my daughter Quady, 4 Negroes. That is to say, Hannah, and it has her name in Cherokee, her son, Betsy, and another name in Cherokee, which I can't pronounce, the son of Hannah. To another name in Cherokee that I can't pronounce, my daughter, one Negro girl named, and this is also Cherokee, but it seems like it's Ayusta, I don't know. My youngest daughter, Jenny, Mariah, and her 2 children, and they have Cherokee names. I also shall leave the balance, 2 boys, Negro, house, its furniture, and plantation, also the old Negro woman named Phoebe, to my youngest daughter, Jenny, who lives with me in the same house. This property, as I have willed it, shall take effect after my death. Given under my hand the date and date above written. Witness, Peggy Pathkiller, and has her mark in John Ridge.
Do we know who wrote that, or did she write it?
I have, I actually have, and I didn't pull it out, but it has all the preliminary stuff, the court information on it. I have it in my folder.
It certainly sounds like an attorney wrote it.
Yes, I think so. Okay. And then there's other documents that say, more than this, that tells about the estate that Ridge was, administered at this estate, and it talks about what was left behind, how many acres, and apple orchards and peach orchards, and actually there was a ferry because Peggy Pathkiller and they owned a ferry, and that was also I think Ridge bought the ferry, and but anyway, the estate was considerable, and I love this. Well, I love it for many reasons, but when you think about writing something, a historical novel, just calling the slaves by name, there's just so much here to draw from. Anyway, at one point, Mike Bryn writes to me, the only records I have found of Houston, or Usti, using a surname, it was in the index to the Lost Flint District Claims Book 7. In that book, he is listed as Houston Pathkiller, administer to Nancy Pathkiller's estate.
When did she actually die?
Peggy Pathkiller?
Yes.
That would have been in 1829.
So she died the same year. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it will. Okay.
No, wait. She was born... No, wait. Peggy Pathkiller. I'm not sure. I think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Pathkiller died in 1827.
Okay.
Now, Usti, or Houston, would have been the grandson of Peggy Pathkiller.
Mm-hmm.
And he was born in 1810, and he died in 1861 in Tahlequah District.
Now, he's your great-grandfather or your grandfather?
No, this is my great
Okay.
grandfather. It
Good.
is.
I was trying to figure that.
Yeah, see what I mean? It's mind-boggling. Okay, he was born in 1810. He died in 1861 in Tahlequah District. Then, his son, Plastama, whom my sister wrote about in this book, and I have the tintype picture of,
Mm-hmm.
that was Usti, or Houston Pathkiller's son, and he was born out at Blue Springs, outside of Tahlequah, in 1827 and died in 1880. Then, then following through, then his son was my great-grandfather, Sequoyah Houston,
Mm-hmm.
who was born in 1854 out at Blue Springs and died in 1894 in a gunfight, which, has been written about because Sequoyah Houston was a Cherokee light horseman and a federal marshal,
Mm-hmm.
and he was killed by Cherokee Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then, that was my great-grandfather. Then, his son, Mac Houston, or Skahedja,
Right.
that's my grandfather,
Mm-hmm.
was born in 1887 out at Blue Springs before statehood, and he died in 1981.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was born in 1914, Mac Houston's daughter, and she will be 92 years old in January.
Yeah. Amazing.
So you see, I have quite a bit of historical stuff here to draw from.
Right.
I really do. And I wanted to, if I may, I'd like to read this quote, which is nothing to do with my family, but when I think about writing and what you are doing here and what you do when you interview people, I think it's significant. And I took this from a children's story, Native American, and I wrote this quote down a long time ago, and I just loved it. "Remember only this one thing," said Badger. "The stories people tell have a way of taking care of them. If stories come to you, care for them, and learn to give them away when they are needed. Sometimes a person needs a story more than food to stay alive. That is why we put these stories into each other's memory. This is how people care for themselves." And that was from a book, a children's book called Crow and Weasel by Barry Lopez.
Mm-hmm.
I just have always hung on to that. I thought it was wonderful. I have some other visuals here that you might want to see
Please.
from my family
I
history.
do.
First of all, because this is to honor my sister, and I don't have a current picture handy, but I like this because it ties in her interest with the Cherokee,
Mm-hmm.
our Cherokee history. And this was like a beauty contest when she was in high school, and there was a write-up for it in the Tulsa World here, 8 Indian girls in finals of film contest.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't even read it. It's so, it's Xeroxed. And anyway, Sue Ann Emerson, age 16, and she was like a runner-up, and I guess the girl that made the grade got a contract with Columbia Motion Pictures. And so I have, it just has a lot of sentimental value to me.
And she's age 16 there.
Mm-hmm. I want to show you one other one of her where she's playing the piano around the same age.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this one of her.
Yeah. It's Push that down just a bit. That's great. And she's probably not about the same age, isn't she? Maybe a little
About
older?
the same age, yeah. She was probably practicing piano for some of these beauty contests. Then I want to show you a picture of my mother and my brother because they were unable to be here today. And this was taken maybe 4 or 5 years ago, not long after my sister's death.
Mm-hmm. And your brother's name is?
Jerry Emerson.
Yeah. And where does he live?
He lives and actually lives in Tulsa.
Mm-hmm.
He's a dentist, and he has his practice over in Collinsville.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom, like I said, she's going to be 92 next month.
Mm-hmm.
She was very excited to find out that she's descended from Cherokee royalty.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
We always knew she was royalty of some kind.
Yeah.
She's going to get mad at me for saying that.
Well, all moms are.
Now, a lot of this is from in my sister's book. My grandfather and I do want to show the original tintype
Please.
of Plastama, who came on the trail. I have to keep those dates in front of me. Where did I put it? I hope you can.
Let's see if I can. No, I have to.
I have some Xerox copies of it. If you can't, they might be more clear. Now that's Klastama, and he was born in 1827, and he died in 1880.
And when do you think the image was made?
Oh, well, I don't know how old he would have been there. It must have been taken in Indian Territory, right? Because he was removed. I mean, the removal was 1838. So he was a grown, obviously very. I think that was taken around the time of his the Civil War, and I have a document of his release from the Civil War. I'd like you to look at too.
Really?
Yes.
He was on which side?
Both, and I understand that happened frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what it says on this document. But he was from the Indian Home Guard,
Mm-hmm.
and I want you to put it on camera. But it says, Plastama, Tahlequah, and it says Indian Home Guard. It has his age on there, and I can't read it. Oh, it's how many years he served.
Mm-hmm.
Is hereby discharged from the service of the United States this day of May 1865 at Fort Gibson, Cherokee Nation. I can't read some of this. Anyway, it says he comes from the Cherokee Nation, the state of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Age 27 years. Here it is. Interesting. 5'11", which that's pretty tall.
That's tall for that era. Yes.
And dark complexion, black eyes, black hair, and at Fort Gibson, is where this document was officiated. And then it says a farmer. I think it says farmer by when enrolled as a farmer.
Mm-hmm. Not sure how that's going to turn.
My mother.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
My mother. We have. My mother also has the Cherokee Bible, the Old and New Testament, written in the Cherokee language. It's falling apart, and if I had gotten over there, and I had hoped she would feel like coming.
Do you know what edition that is?
No, I don't. I can find out. I don't know, but I was hoping she would feel like coming over. I was going to go over yesterday and pick her up, but she's just not able to. There's I have lots of things, articles and pictures of Sequoia Houston, the Battle of the Halfway House, which is written about in several history books, which I love one particular paragraph that's written about him. I'd love to read that at some point. Let's see. But I wanted to show you, before I forget it, I really want to show you Now this is over at Oklahoma City. Maybe you can tell me where this is. It's not a monument. I can't think of the right word. All the Cherokee or the Indian light horsemen. It's somewhere over in Oklahoma City, and Sequoia Houston's name is on there.
Oh, that was. I'm not sure where this is now.
I first thought it was out by the Cowboy Hall of Fame, but
It's,
my mother said, no, it's...
No, these are... this is the memorial to law enforcement officers.
Yes.
And so it was near the Cowboy Hall. It is now... it's still in the northeast part of town, but I don't recall exactly where it is now.
Oh, so it was out by the Cowboy Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Okay.
And that, for some reason, that didn't work out financially or some other reason. I don't know what it is, but they just recently observed this weekend, and the fallen officers and so on and so forth.
Oh, really?
So they do that once a year.
Okay. So. I want to mention, like I said, we have lots of documents and things that are written particularly about Sequoia Houston, but Klostama, when in the tintype, had several sisters and brothers that I have documented, but we have a picture of her name was Charlotte or Charlotte Teehee. And that's interesting because Teehee, is my understanding, in Cherokee means killer. So it ties in with this whole path killer thing. Because on one document we see her name is Charlotte Teehee. Anyway, I have a picture of her. She was born in 1848, sister of Klostama. She was very traditional. I think she was born in Pegs.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been fascinated with her for no particular reason. I mean, I only heard stories about her that she was very traditional, and about her, people making jokes about her broken English. Family members making jokes about her broken English.
Mm-hmm.
But she's always held me. Something about her gaze, and if you look at her hands look very gnarled. Like she's done a lot of hard work. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing that came to light through all this correspondence with Mike Wren is that she filed a claim that is extensive, is so full of information about our family. And so, I want to acknowledge her because even though people, she probably never...
Filed a claim in...
No. She's been a great source of information for our family history. This traditional Indian woman that, people just tell jokes about because she tried very hard to communicate in her broken English. Mm-hmm. But I have a claim here that's just extensive that she filed that's just full of information on our family, before the, who came from the nation east and all the brothers and sisters and aunts and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the title of it. I can't think of it. Guion claim. Do you know? Are you familiar with that one?
Guion.
I think it's Guion. I have it here. Anyway, can you see me as a high school English teacher? I used to teach high school English, but I am not organized these days. As far as Path Killer goes, there is a website. I sent you that website, didn't I? And I copied this off the website. And there's two different places that he is supposed to be buried. Mm-hmm. And I talked to Mike Wren last night, and he believes that he is buried at the, it's close to the Turkey Town location. But there's also another one. They claim a burial site for him in New Echota, which is in Georgia.
May I see the first page, please?
Yeah, it's a tabletop grave. Oh, here's another picture of a tabletop grave, which they're fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with them. There are some in Cherokee County.
I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah.
Well, let me read this
Okay.
this address here. It's www.darkfiber.com/tomb/cemeteries/ecota/pathkiller. In case someone looks at this, they'll be able to
Okay.
use
Thank you.
that if it's still running by then.
Yeah. Anyway, I would love to go down to where the area is around Turkeytown, Alabama, and I would have loved to have taken my mother down there and taken a picture at that,
Excellent.
designated gravesite there. My mother, because of all this information that came to us, she took me out to Blue Springs, which is, north of Tahlequah, where we have a family cemetery there and Indian burial grounds from our family. And my father did a diagram of that, 'cause some of the graves are unmarked. And we don't know where Nancy Pathkiller is buried, who would have been the mother of Usti or Houston Pathkiller. She may be buried in our family cemetery. It may be one of those unmarked graves. But my mother took me out there, and across the highway there's another, it's called Bluebird or some other cemetery across the road, big cemetery, and there's a tabletop grave out there. And my mother became interested when I showed her this, and she said, well, there are tabletop graves in Cherokee County. And she showed me this particular one. I wanted to show you a diagram of our family cemetery out at Blue Springs. This one came from some historical document. I don't know. I wish I knew what it came out of. It's got Levi Christie, but it's got the old Blue Springs.
Yeah, that's about right.
That's about right.
Okay.
And we know that, of course, Sequoia Houston and Klastama and Tuka, who lived to be 100 years old, she's buried out there. There's several unmarked graves of babies, in the family.
Okay, so the top one is the Levi Christie.
And then there's one above that, which is Double Springs.
Mm-hmm. And then the bottom is Old Blue Springs.
Right, which is our family cemetery.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Okay. And my father, and this was a diagram that my father did, because my father was so interested. He was for a long time more interested in our Indian history than my mother was, and he did this diagram of the graves that are out there, and some of it is speculative as to who is in the family is buried out there. But
how old was your father when he did that, do you think, give or take?
Oh gosh, he's been gone since 1979. I would say probably around 1969 he might have done this.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in that time period. Yeah, I'm not sure. Let's see, what else? Oh, I know what I really want you. I mean, there's so much here, but I just thought there's so interesting. I have documents of the validations, and I have the names of everybody who came in our detachment, the Binge detachment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting to see. I want to show you. Now, this is a transcription.
Right.
But I have the original document,
I think we
too.
have these documents, actually.
You do?
I think so.
Okay. But I found it very interesting, yeah, because, see, look, this is the original.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I found it so interesting to go through, though, and see not, members of my family that I highlighted, but also people whose families I know around Tahlequah that we all stayed together. You know, I mean, on here you have the corn tassels. Well, they're related to Chad Smith. I mean, that's his, and the man killers, and that we all came here together. You know, I mean, maybe that shouldn't be so hard to, but it just fascinated me to.
Well, it's interesting. We can still identify the same community.
Yes, yes, it is, and some of the names. I mean, you know, some of the names that are on here are you wonder how they got their names.
Well, that is a mystery, isn't it? Our understanding of the origin of names, for whatever language it's in, it's always a little bit of a mystery.
Yeah, it is.
And I think we always suffer from trying to interpret it literally rather than maybe how it was done during the time the name was first in use.
Yeah. But then also, you probably have this also at the Historical Society. Somewhere I have the validations, you know, how much everybody, because they had so many people that were grave diggers, you know, that were paid along the way, those that were, you know, that drove the wagons, and it's just interesting.
It is, indeed.
So, I don't know if I have covered everything that we should cover, or talk more about.
I think you have. Now, remind me again, your brothers and sisters, your deceased sister we mentioned earlier, and your brother that's the dentist, and
My mother.
Your mom is still with us. Okay. And that's your family at this point?
Yes, okay. It is. I mean, I have cousins over in Tahlequah, too. You know, my mother had a brother that passed away about 4 years ago, Leonard Houston. And, of course, my daughter, you know, right. My daughter's over in China. But, yeah, that's pretty much it. Good. I would love to go down to that part of the country at some time. And if I, you know, pursue writing this, I know I'll have to go down there and visit that area.
Well, thank you.